Here, before I launch into a bookshelf tour, let me just do a quick update on Wshngtn Blck by S.A. Dugan. See, I'm saying that right. I'll have to check on that. So this is tracks 15 to, I think it's 21. It's basically part two of the novel where, yes, they launch the cloud splitter into the air and pretty rapidly seem to crash into a ship going by. I don't know how far they got. Feel like they got that far. They crash into a ship, are taken in by a captain and his brother, who is the ship's surgeon. They are twins, and they are orphan boys who are crewed, and the ship is crewed by a ship of other orphan boys that they've taken in. They just kept on taking them, and those are the ones that stuck with them, and that like they all know that they basically they depend on each other. Um, the surgeon brother, who is mostly into the study of feet, has a couple of fingers chopped off through some encounters with the French. So I think it's kind of the whole smugglers thing. They're not in the slave trade. Though I guess they're in the economy of the time, which it's sugar, rum, it's all the stuff that comes from enslaved people making all this stuff. So there is that. They get taken to Virginia to the brothers kind of suss out what's happening, but they're like, you're kind of orphans too, so they take them to Virginia, where Tick takes them to they find out that Wash has a bounty, a really large bounty on his head of like £1,000, which is like probably a crazy amount of money at the time. And Tick is sort of like, oh, that's pretty bad, and it's like Washington's like, that's my death warrant. That's like either you know there's probably, and indeed it's like they say like, well, can we go to England? It's like, well, they'd follow us to England. They follow for £1,000. Slave hunters would follow you everywhere. So he's really, really fucked. He is really screwed. I mean, I guess he was gonna die by Erasmus' hand for being present at his brother Philip's suicide. So it's one and a half of the other. It's like he's screwed one way or the other in this world. Christopher goes to a fellow that he only knows through kind of correspondence, who studies the dead, and indeed there's severed limbs. They find in like one scene a severed woman's limb in his place. He's a preacher, but he's obviously doesn't believe in God or anything. It's just like that's how he's gotten his education. But the big thing that he finds out is that his father is still alive, and it's like he's still in the North. It's like, what the hell? It's like, can this be true? And he's like Titch is completely shocked. And they get passage and they go north, and they find the father living amongst the Inuit. Probably, I think they're called Eskimo in the book, because that's what they would have been called at the time. But it's the Inuit, and his father's still like, yeah, oh, that trouble you're having with Erasmus, well, I don't want to bother him about his business dealings. It's like he doesn't really the father doesn't really give a fuck about it. And indeed, all his scientific, kind of the pure scientific stuff, is being funded through these plantations run by his really, really cruel son Erasmus. And it's interesting because like talks about them playing Erasmus and he as children, and it's like they seem to be like kind of similarly kind of an idyllic childhood, though. It's interesting that the necrotic scholar that they meet earlier says, oh, you've got this scar on your lip, which has probably it was jabbed there and was yanked for several minutes until it was finally pulled out. And it's like, well, is that got something to do with Erasmus and his sadistic tendencies? Um, but the kind of the big thing with all this is that Tick Tick just realizes that his father isn't going to do anything about this situation. That that he's basically doomed to live under his brother, uh, and in the end, you know, and it's like his father has never kind of it's like what is it? Wash says it's like it's not that he can't love, but that his heart is like a broken instrument and it can only love intermittently, which is probably worse than just no love at all. Trust me, I know on that score. Um, and and so Tick kind of like, you wonder what's this all about. Like Tick wonders, like, was this all plot to get me to come up to my father, like, with his death? But it's like, well, Philip wouldn't blow his head off just for that. But his Philip's own kind of despair, you wonder what's running in this family, that you have Philip shooting himself, and then Tick, who in the end just says, like, I can't do anything more for you. You need to take care of yourself. And you're thinking, oh, is he just going to abandon them and leave him there, and he's just going to go off and have his own life? It's like, no. Tick goes out into the white, into a raging whiteout, and is consumed by the whiteness. You got to think there's a little bit of symbology there of he's consumed by his own whiteness, his own bleak desperation, and is it's like he's disgusted by this world, and he ends up just being consumed by it and dies and is dead. And what will this leave Wshngtn Blck? How is he going to survive? And we've had these kind of things of like, oh, you should go to Canada where you can be a free man. It's like, yeah, I wonder how that's going to work out. Luckily, this is a Canadian author, so I'm not expecting it to be happy, perfect world. I'm expecting more really terribleness for poor Wshngtn Blck. So yeah, that's what I've got so far for part 2, basically halfway through this novel. More later.